You know, this last week in Washington, D.C., there was a day that they were labeling as Snowquester. In Colorado, we had a very different view of it. We just called it Wednesday. But we also dealt with a very serious issue of sequestration. You know, the President of the United States over these past few weeks has been laying out a scenario to where schools would not be able to perform. Teachers were going to be laid off. There'd be massive lines at our airports. Planes would not be able to fly. Well, here's the real reality. He took it a step too far with closing the White House, not allowing young tourists to be able to come on their one trip to Washington, D.C. to be able to visit the people's house. Here's the real reality. We're talking about a 2% slowdown in terms of the rate of growth of federal spending. Here's the reality we're dealing with right back at home. Our hardworking families all saw their pay go down a little better than 2% when the payroll tax deduction was not extended. Impacted our families, that net take-home pay, the money that we need to be able to pay our mortgages, to be able to pay for the gasoline to fill our cars, and to be able to provide for our children. So can Washington see a 2% reduction, not in real spending, but just in the rate of growth? I think inarguably, Washington needs to hold itself fiscally accountable. You know, this coming year, we're going to see Washington collect more money than ever from tax receipts from hardworking Americans. $2.7 trillion will flow into federal coffers. The challenge is going to be that the plans are to spend better than $3.5 trillion, meaning that we can continue to grow the debt and the deficit of this country. How does that impact us at home? In a very real way. You know, this year we're going to be paying better than $200 billion in just interest on the federal debt. Now, every one of us that have had a mortgage, we all understand those interest payments. We've looked at the tables of a 30-year mortgage and how much less we would pay if we had a 15-year mortgage in terms of the actual dollars that are coming out, meaning more dollars to be able to provide for our families and to be able to take care of necessary expenditures that we have. Washington needs to look at it just like we do at home. In fact, if we don't address this in just 7 short years, we will see that interest payment on the nation's debt rise from better than $200 billion to $778 billion by the year 2020. Imagine how many children that we could educate, how many roads that we could pave, how well we would be able to respond without looking for additional tax revenue to national disasters like Hurricane Sandy, which devastated the Northeast this year, if we had this fiscal house in Washington, D.C. in order. You know, a balanced approach should not be one where you give and the government takes. This needs to be looking out for the American people, understanding that our families at home right now are truly struggling to be able to pay their bills. We have so many people in our district right now, as we've often commented, in our 2 largest communities, in Pueblo, in Grand Junction, we have a real unemployment level of better than 20%. These are families that aren't looking for another government program. They're looking for a job and a paycheck. We need to be able to create those opportunities. We're moving through some of our legislation to be able to achieve some of that goal. We just passed out of the subcommittee hearing, and it will be going to the full Natural Resources Committee with probably the next 2 weeks, our small hydroelectric bill, a bill which provides clean energy, is going to be able to create jobs. In fact, the energy that's going to be created out of this, just in the state of Colorado, out of the pipelines, the conduits, what many of us in the rural West call ditches, that the Bureau of Reclamation built, electricity for better than 1 million homes. Enough energy to equal that that's generated by the Glen Canyon Dam. A good piece of legislation, jobs legislation, and an environmentally sound policy as well. We've also reintroduced our Healthy Forest Management and Wildfire Act. We have a fire season coming. We want to be able to empower our governor, our county commissioners, to be able to go in and address much of the devastation that our forests are seeing with the bark beetle blight that's going through. It does have some benefits. We're going to be able to create healthy forests. We're going to be able to increase groundwater. We're going to strengthen the health of the forest that exists there. We're also going to be able to create jobs, and from some of the biomass, we're going to be able, again, to create energy. And this is going to be important to our senior citizens that are on fixed income, our young families, that are worried about those ever-increasing heating and electric bills that they see that they have to pay for on a regular basis. We're also in the near future going to be reintroducing our bill on Planning for America's Energy Future Act. This is the time when we need to make sure that we're getting Americans to work. We do it in a responsible way, and we take the reins of leadership to be able to guide this country's destiny in the future rather than relying on others for our energy sources. Sitting on the Ag Committee, I have the assurance of Chairman Lucas that we will not see another extension, but we will pass a farm bill out of the House this year. We'll be using with the bill that we passed for and that I voted for out of the House Agriculture Committee this last year to make sure that we're standing up for the farm and ranch community. We need to make sure that the people who grow our food have that certainty going forward to be able to produce the crops that we need to be able to eat and to be able to survive. We continue to encourage you calling into our office to be able to hear your voice so that we can express your values and your words and make sure that they're heard here in Washington. And we'll be back in the district, as we are virtually every weekend this weekend, be able to be back and hear the concerns of our constituents.